What's up guys, my here MKS Performance. If you've been following us lately, you will have noticed that we're doing a full rebuild, nice MKS Performance blueprint on one of our customers. It's a Volkswagen Verano 2.9 VR6, been supercharged. It's ABV engine code. Unfortunately, the engine that is in the car is no longer fit for purpose. It's well past its service limits, so we have had to source a second-hand unit, which is what we've got here today. It's Saturday, we've just finished completely disassembling the engine block down to the last nut and bolt. And what we're going to start doing is effectively blueprinting. We're going to have to look at the condition of the block, the service limits of the block. Point of fact, it's worth mentioning that these old VR engines, particularly the AAA and the ABV engine codes, they're getting on a bit now. And the problem we're seeing time and time again is that the G10 cooling that they were using back then, the inhibitors, the rust inhibitors that was in the coolant, starts to break down quite quickly because some dealers or independent garages weren't changing it frequently enough. So what tends to happen is the coolant will become so diluted in inhibitors, the block starts to get corroded, which is what we can see here. So the ABV and the AAA engine codes, they came in one with an MLS head gasket, and the other one was like a nylon weaved fabric type head gasket. The problem with MLS head gaskets is when the inhibitors start to weaken in the coolant, it actually starts the MLS gasket starts to bond itself to the actual deck, is what we can actually see here. The nylon sort of fabric woven ones aren't too bad because there's nothing really to rust, but unfortunately the cylinder heads start to go as well. So what we're going to have to do with this, obviously, we're going to measure the bores. We've got our external mic set to the factory brand new service limit. Off the top of my head, it's like 82.01 mil, and we've got our bore gauge, which will then zero to the external mic, and then we'll go down into the bores from a 12 to 6 o'clock position at 3 points down the bore, and then again in the 9 to 3 o'clock position, again 3 points down the bore. And we'll take an average and figure out where the service limit is in this block. This is supposed to be a nice low mileage one, so we're looking pretty good. If it was the old AAA engine codes, you could, which is a 2.8 VR6, you could bore them out to 2.9, which is effectively what an ABV block is. What this one is here. You can't bore out an ABV 2.9 VR6 because unfortunately it just gets too thin between the bores. What you see here is plenty of meat between the cylinder bores here, but what you have to remember though is that this is a V configuration. Now, don't let the single cylinder head fool you. It is very much a V. Now, the bores get narrower as it goes down to the center point of the crankshaft. So this is one of the reasons why, particularly supercharged or turbocharged VR engines that we do, we won't bore out a 2.9 ABV purely for the fact that it just gets too thin at the bottom. Some people have done it and gotten away with it, but unfortunately I don't want to risk it. So that's the bore there. We've scraped most of the rust off, and we've then degreased it as well, just so we can get a good example of how the block is looking. They usually go around here just because the corrosion, the back of the engine, all the road grime. But this one seems to be quite solid. It's a pretty good neck, all things considering. But don't let the rust upset you. It's worth mentioning BMW back in the 70s, I think it was the 70s, when they were turbocharging the Formula 1 engines, the 4-cylinder, they were getting old taxi engines at scrapyards that were really, really rusty, but they would then bore them out, open them up to bigger capacity. When a cast iron block corrodes, it case hardens it, the block becomes stiffer. So that's an actual benefit with cast iron. Providing you can't put your finger through a cylinder bore, they're quite a stout block. So over here we've got the crankshaft. Again, we'll get our external mic. We'll then measure all the journals. We've got the mains and we've got the big ends. So point of fact worth mentioning when blueprinting engines, it's all measuring. Measuring, it needs to be consistent as possible. You need to be consistent how you measure it, what you're measuring it with, and calibrating your mics, your bore gauges, your depth finders. Everything needs to be calibrated so you're getting consistent readings. Point of fact, this is the old MLS head gasket. You can see the corrosion build up on it because there isn't enough inhibitor in the system, or it's just too diluted. So it starts to effectively bond itself to the block and the cylinder head. And obviously when you come to separate that for any engine build that you have to do, it makes my job a little bit more difficult. So with the engine block and the cylinder head, the block, I think we're probably going to have to take about 20 thou, 15 to 20 thou off that block, just because the corrosion is quite bad. So we need to get a nice clean prepped surface for the new MLS gasket to go on top. Again, with the cylinder head, we've got our cylinder head for the VR set up in our pneumatic valve spring compressor. You would have seen that in operation when we first made that about a month ago. So again, the cylinder head is in position ready to get the valve springs taken out, so we can get the valves out. Again, it's worth mentioning keeping the valves in a numerical order from where the ports they came out of, as well as the hydraulic buckets. We're actually quite busy this time of year. We've got a 2 litre TFSI engine that we're going to be doing an MKS Performance forged blueprint engine build on that for one of our customers. That's going in the Mark IV Golf, so that should be quite tasty, a tasty car. So yeah, that's where we are just now, and we'll keep you updated. Cheers.